Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Council Cabinet, Derby City Council, on Wednesday, the 10th of March. Excuse me. Onto the agenda. Apologies, please. Any apologies received?
None received.
Any late items?
None that I'm aware of.
I don't believe we have any receipt of any petitions.
No, we don't.
Identification of urgent items to which calling will not apply.
There are none.
Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 5, which is declarations of interest. Silence there, so I take it there are none. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February 2021. Can I have a proposer, please?
Proposed.
Seconder? Councillor Barker? Okay, in that case, item 7, matters referred, recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board, and there are some which, but we'll deal with them in the normal way that we've developed of dealing with them item by item. I'll refer to them on each item, those that have come forward. So we can move swiftly on then to item 8, which is Community Managed Library Review proposals.
Okay, thank you, Leader. This report is highlighting the need for us to extend our arrangement with Community with Direct Help and Advice, DHA, who run our community managed libraries, to take into account the impact of COVID over the last 12 months and the no capacity, therefore, to have done that review in that period. In common with many of our partners across the city, DHA have been extremely creative and flexible and collaborative in working in a different way to meet the needs of our community through COVID, and have changed the way they operated to make that work, and to ideas like order and collect for residents to collect books, online groups, and using social media for rhyme time for families, etc., and coffee mornings, volunteers working in the community hub. And DHA have been a very important player within our community hub arrangements that supported the community response throughout the pandemic. So really cemented our relationship with them really effectively, and really developing our vision for how we use the CML libraries as part of that community resource at local level. So it seems very sensible to extend the agreement with the community managed libraries for a further 12 months to allow proper consideration and to build in those lessons through COVID into a new agreement, and to do that effectively. There is no impact on the medium-term financial plan or no impact on service delivery to extend that for that 12-month period. Thank you, Chairman.
You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, any questions or comments on item 8, please? Executive Scrutiny did consider item 8 last night and resolved to note the report, I believe. So if there are no other comments or questions, then we have recommendations contained in 2.1 and 2.2. Can they be agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. So be it. Item 9 then is the Infrastructure Capital Programme for 21-22. Who's going to present this for us, please?
That's me, Chair, if that's...
Werner, thank you.
Okay, yeah. This is the standard annual report on our capital programme that you will all be very familiar with. So it sets out the proposed work programme for the next year across the three main areas, but also a 3-year asset management plan, which we're required to do as for the Department for Transport. So these are our infrastructure schemes and our maintenance schemes that we propose to put forward for next year. As you know, the programme is based on very sound asset management principles and relevant externally funded schemes. And of course, most of the schemes are agreed through the neighbourhood board process with ward councillors across the city, and that's detailed in the report. Just a just a couple of things really to highlight for me on the report. One is additional funding. So there's a number of additional funding streams highlighted on this paper. The first is the 9 million additional capital funding, 3 million last year, 6 million this year, which is already making a difference in the city, providing additional schemes for highway maintenance, as well as innovation and technology. I think quite a few of you have seen the Hogzilla multi-hog device out on the streets, making a big difference. But also, not just that, not just on the surface, but we've had an extensive gully cleaning programme as well that we've been able to achieve and will continue into next year. The other funding streams come from external sources, so Transforming Cities, Future Transport Zones and the Active Travel Tranche 2 funding now sit under this capital programme. The other point was just to add that we still continue with our cleaner fleet policy as part of this, and the maintenance of vehicles, replacing them with electric where we can, but always moving to the cleanest where that's reasonable and possible. And then the final one is really that going back to those asset management principles, that, you know, this strong approach is what we need, not just for the maintenance of our assets, but also to ensure that we continue to get the funding from government. So it's very, very vitally important that we keep up that good practice, and really to prevent us, you know, continuing to have to spend revenue on high cost interventions when we're at the end of life for an asset, and really try and move towards prevention. But again, annual standard report that hopefully you're all very familiar with. Thank you, Chair.
You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note this report last night. Councillor Smale, it's your portfolio. Anything you want to particularly highlight? Maybe the £9 million investment in our roads?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I just very much welcome the report. Obviously, we've had extensive conversations with Werner on the traffic and transportation team, but as well as Dave Kinsey's team in highways. Obviously, it crosses over broadly into mine and Councillor Holmes's portfolio, but very extensive. The £9 million capital, obviously, that we injected in last year's budget is now starting to feed through. There's been some major schemes that have gone ahead in all wards based on asset management from the teams. There's no political diversion in this. It's based on what the roads need, where and when, regardless at the time. I'm looking forward to the additional money that we've injected for this year's portion, the extra 6 million. Just also worth noting, Chair, that this paper comes yearly, and it's quite easy to just dismiss it and say, yes, we've done what's required of us. But having this 3-year plan shows us the good governance that we're putting forward in towards our asset management. And just recently, roughly about 2 to 3 weeks ago, the government announced further funding towards our infrastructure. I think in total we've been awarded £4.7 million from central government, 2 million of it ideally emphasised into the highways project, but also the remainder of the money to go in towards traffic and transportation to help deal with clean air, to improve infrastructure of highway points, you know, that might require us to help increase fluidity in the city. So all in all, it is an incredible bit of work, and the challenges that the teams have had in the last 12 months with the impact of COVID, especially from March to June, a lot of things are up in the air, but they still managed to pursue the capital programme in our highways network. So long may it continue. And I want to thank all fellow councillors of all parties, obviously all played a part in this, to obviously help residents get the message out when we do have road networks resurfaced. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, we've got recommendations 2.1 to 2.5 in the report. Can we agree those, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you. And then we move on to item 10, the private sector housing renewal policy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this paper. This is Cabinet approval for the adoption of the private housing renewal policy 2021 to 2030. very relevant to bring this policy update to members now in terms of the impact of COVID, particularly on our private accommodation, rented and owned occupation across the city and its housing. Obviously, COVID had a major impact on people's ability to pay rent and to meet some of the needs from their housing positions, and this policy will really help us to address some of those issues around some of the services we already run that help people in those situations. So the council has developed some quite nationally regarded services in that regard. So Call Before You Serve, which works with landlords and tenants in the private rented sector to provide advice and guidance and support very early on, particularly of those concerned about rent arrear issues or potential insecurity, to try and find ways to mediate and support individuals to stay in their home. And fundamentally, the whole policy around our interaction, our intervention into the private housing sector is to support people to stay independent, to stay safe and to be supported. So the consultation that was carried out around the updating and the renewing of this policy was quite comprehensive across the city, and some of the key headlines to refer for members: a priority around improving the conditions in the private rented sector and for people to stay independent, so safe and secure at home, to support enforcement action where that is needed against what we see as rogue landlords in the city, and there are some of those that need to be tackled effectively, support to help prevent instances of threat or harassment or eviction, particularly in this sector, very much closely aligned to our homelessness strategy. Clearly, in the private rented sector, people with insecure tenancies, evicted and in need, could come into homelessness services. So a real priority around trying to prevent that homelessness happening by getting in there early and supporting tenants and landlords to find solutions. Promoting higher awareness around some of our services, disabled facilities grants, a healthy housing hub, our handy person scheme that allows people to stay safe at home. And critically, what's driven some of the work in the strategy is our private sector housing condition survey carried out in 2019. It's been a really comprehensive analysis of the condition of our private housing in Derby, and that's been used to inform this policy, and very much also looking in this next phase at how we may use more interventionist policies to support dealing with the private rented sector, particularly around accreditation schemes or licensing schemes, other things other councils have used as methods to try and support better conditions in that sector for local residents. So really asking members to agree adoption of that policy and for that to take place.
Thank you, Rachel. The Exec Scrutiny Board resolved last night to recommend to Council Cabinet that the private sector renewal policy is reviewed again next year, by which time we should have a zero carbon target date for the city. Given that more than a quarter of carbon emissions are from housing, we need strong policy to deliver on this. Rachel, any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, clearly housing is a really important contributor to climate change impacts. A number of things already in the policy address some of those issues around supporting bringing back empty homes into use and thermal insulation, and using some of our funding opportunities to provide more energy efficiency measures in housing across the various stocks. But absolutely happy to bring back the policy reviewed to take into account the climate change impacts for next year. That's been fine to do that, Chair.
Anything to add, Councillor Repton?
No, I think it's encapsulated there, Chair. Thank you.
Roy, your portfolio, anything you wanted to add?
Yes, it's a wide and varied report, so it goes from healthy housing through to improvement and renovation grants. We've got some items coming up later on empty homes, and you will see that within this report at 4.2 we do provide empty homes renovation loans, so that we try and encourage owners of properties that are empty to bring them back up to standard, and if not, then we will take action to compulsorily purchase them ourselves and bring them back into the housing stock. We've mentioned, or Rachel has mentioned, the healthy housing assistance. There's also disabled facilities grants that are available to keep people within their homes if adaptation of a property would be suitable in helping them meet those needs. So this not only meets housing needs but health and well-being needs across the private rented sector, and the consultation has been very positive in bringing back some of these issues. I welcome the response from executive scrutiny. I'm prepared to accept the response, but please do not expect it to be a full review of this policy. It will be a review of where we've come in the previous 12 months, and will allow our climate change forum and our housing part of that forum to deliver on where we're going with climate change agenda and the private rented sector housing. So on those conditions, I'm prepared to accept. Can I recommend that we accept 2.1, which is the only recommendation on this paper?
Okay. So, any other comments or questions? No? You've thrown me a little, Roy, there. What are the recommendations? Where are we? Renewal policy. The recommendation is 2.1, you're right. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, then can we agree recommendation 2.1?
Agreed.
Okay, then we'll move on to item 11, which is the Derby Homes renewal of partnership agreement. Rachel?
Thank you, Chris. So members will clearly be aware that Derby Homes, as the council's arm's length management organisation, manages on behalf of the City Council's housing stock of social housing of nearly 13,000 properties. The current arrangement with Derby Homes expires in 2022, and the council carried out a review last year to look at the quality of service that we receive from Derby Homes, what the residents are experiencing, and the overall partnership arrangements with Derby Homes, to see whether we wanted to extend that or to change our arrangements around how we wanted our housing stock to be managed into the future. The review was confirmed, I think, what members are already aware of, the high quality of the services provided by Derby Homes. The Almo is an exemplary provider of services and reaches the top quartile of national benchmarks across the board, offers extremely good value for money, and this report really is proposing a new 10-year contract with Derby Homes for the continuation of the management of our properties, with a 5-year break clause if necessary. And just to reinforce for members that I think, yet again, COVID, despite the challenges it's placed on all of us over the last 12 months, has really highlighted the benefits of that greater collaboration that we have between Derby Homes and the council, which is cemented into this new partnership agreement. And the work we've done through the last 12 months that Derby Homes lead for us as a city council, particularly around the homelessness support, is again exemplary. I'm sure members will have noticed the rough sleepers count, I think a week ago now, was at 6 individuals in the city. Quite an incredible success and improvement from previous years, and a real shows that partnership working across the system to deal with our most vulnerable and complex individuals. And also phenomenal work that Derby Homes took part in around the community hub in that community response. So a real sense of recognising the real value that the council gets from this agreement and working closely with Derby Homes in terms of the ability to flex across the general fund and the housing revenue account to do additional services over and above the management of those homes that has a benefit to the city as a whole. So really effective arrangements across the board. And I think we have accelerated our working relationship over the last 12 months and perhaps a little bit before that. And I think the extended agreement, which includes this confirmation of our partnership and working collaboratively wherever possible on behalf of our citizens across the city, is a really important step. So asking members really to recommend that partnership agreement for the next 10 years for Derby Homes to be our operator of our housing stock. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rachel. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Councillor Webb, your portfolio, I suspect you might wish to add to some of the comments around Derby Homes' involvement this year.
I would be delighted to, having sat on both sides of the fence, having been a board member of Derby Homes and now a portfolio holder which includes Derby Homes. And from both sides, I see an organisation that is working effectively with Derby City Council. It's 100% owned by Derby City Council, so doesn't exist without our approval. But what it offers Derby City Council is services, as Rachel has mentioned, which include homelessness prevention, and that figure that's announced last week, coming down in the past 3 years from nearly 40 to single figures of 6. It's a fantastic achievement. Working relationships between Derby Homes and the council have never been better, and partnership working has proved really good. Derby Homes leads with regard to climate change technology, and the work that we've done with the War Memorial Village has been outstanding. It's worth going to see the work that Derby Homes has done to provide sustainable homes for some of our war veterans. It's really exemplary. So I would recommend 2.1 and 2.2 because of the work that has been carried out and will continue to be carried out for the benefit of the residents in Derby Homes and the benefit of the city overall.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Any other further comments or questions? No. In that case, can I put recommendation 2.1 and 2.2 to be agreed, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So be it. Then we'll move on to item 12, which is an update on property disposals programme, transfer of assets to the HRA account. Who's going to deal with this one?
Good afternoon, Leader, Chair. If I can introduce this as Service Director of Property Services, my name is Stephen Kaplan, to anyone that isn't a colleague or member. This paper is going to be talked through by my colleagues John Sadler and Ian Fulliger, who are the co-authors and have worked collaboratively on this for the transfer of assets, both outside the council and to our HRA account. And it seeks to work on the established delegation from November 2018 and to accelerate the disposals of surplus assets and support the recovery actions of the council. So I will hand over to my two colleagues who will happily talk you through the detail of the paper and the recommendations, which also work to speed up that process and remove the surplus assets from the council's accounts as quickly as possible. Over to John and Ian, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, as Steve said, this is a sort of two-part report. The first part looks and provides an update on the disposal programme since it was last brought back to Cabinet in 2018. It sets out the progress so far, what we've disposed of, and also sets out in the appendix the current disposal list. Obviously, during that period, we've also looked at other assets, and there's a small list of properties we want to declare surplus set out in Appendix 4. I think the other question that's appearing now as we emerge from post-COVID is that we need to recognise that the portfolio will be changing, and perhaps in order to react quickly to the changes and get rid of surplus properties, we also want to accelerate that programme. And one we are recommending is that we seek a delegated authority to declare about assets sub 250k surplus requirements, but also have delegated authority to enter into property transactions at the value of less than 250k. We feel this sort of allows us to react to market conditions as they change over the next coming months. The other item that we do, obviously we're conscious that the property disposal programme seeks to support regeneration and housing agenda, and it's more particular on that latter item. It's worth noting that properties have been transferred from the general fund to the HRA over the last 2 years, which as they're being progressed, will look to provide over 100 units to support the council housing need. One of the things that has been identified is that there has been a shortage of sites or capacity for housing to really get their teeth into, if you want to call it that, and develop these sites out. And really what we're trying to do under this report is to seek to transfer from the general fund to the housing revenue account some larger and more valuable sites, giving them more capacity to deliver their outputs. So the report goes on to state some sites that it wishes to transfer over, but also seeks to amend some of the delegated authority to ease that process along. In addition, we're probably looking to bring a report back at future cabinet meetings with other sites that we've identified that we want, larger sites which we've identified which we might want to transfer over to the HRA. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Executive Scrutiny Board last night looked at this and resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet to ensure that ward members are informed of land building assets likely to be sold or reallocated prior to final decision being taken. Steve Kaplan, I don't think there'll be many disposals that the local ward councillors won't be aware of, any significant ones anyway, but are you able to give that assurance that they will be advised where significant properties are due to be disposed of?
Yes, Chair. We're very happy to keep ward members fully informed of property transactions that are going to affect their local areas before those final decisions are made through the Cabinet or other processes. We will seek to advise and let ward members know. Thank you.
So we can accept that recommendation. Councillor Repton, anything to add to that?
No, I think it's encapsulated quite clearly in there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Roy Webb, I think it's your portfolio. Still anything to add?
It's joint authors on this report, so okay. I would like Ian Fullager to have his say first before I comment.
Fine, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that both my own teams and the teams at Derby Homes really welcome this proposal. The pressures on this council for additional affordable housing have never been higher than at the current time. With the lifting of the debt cap, the council now has the resources to invest in more new build housing, and the new build housing will be of very high standards, including sprinklers, including high thermal efficiency ratings, and as colleagues have already said, the transfer of these sites will enable us to start developing at scale, at pace, which is exactly what we need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. As I said earlier, having sat on the board of Derby Homes, it's been always an issue that Derby Homes has been asked to pick up these small sites and redevelop sites that other developers would not or may not have taken on. And this gives Derby Homes the opportunity to flex its muscle within the HRA and look at developing social housing. So complexes like or similar to the War Memorial Village I mentioned earlier, extra care facilities which Derby Homes run at Parkland View. So this really opens opportunities for site development, substantial site development that have been laid empty for some time, and it gives us the opportunity to put social housing on the front foot again in this city. So I recommend, if I can get to the recommendations, that we accept them.
2.1 to 2.6. Any other comments or questions in relation to it before I put it to Cabinet?
Yes, please, Chair.
Ruth.
Ms. Skelton. Very much welcome this. Certainly looking at the list in the appendices of the various assets, it will certainly be good to have those transferred over to the HRA, and we hope we'll see some action on those sites, you know, pretty quickly. There is a desperate need for housing, and we all acknowledge that. So we all need to do our best, and I know we will do our best to get that moving. The other thing is just about obviously involving ward councillors in the process. It would be nice if that's done fairly early in the process, so that the ward councillors obviously know their own patches pretty well. If they, you know, they'll probably have some very useful information to pass on, you know, potentially actually being able to improve what actually is put on particular patches of land.
And I guess that goes to my point that it's unlikely that ward councillors won't know about it because they'll have been asked what they know about the properties, presumably. Is that right, Steve? Are you happy with that?
Yes, Chair, I'm sure we are very happy to engage with ward members as early as possible in processes like this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly noted there's a few in my ward, and I have not had any formal approach yet, but would very much welcome it.
Okay, any other comments, questions? No, in that case I'll put recommendations 2.1 to 2.6 to Cabinet. Can it be agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And move on then to item 13, the provision of accommodation for use by children's services. Andy?
I was going to present this
Okay.
case, although it's probably very important that we recognise this is across the council. This is about how we work as a system, as an organisation, rather than in different services. Although this is a housing solution, it is meeting a need in children's services, absolutely. So Andy and I both on board with what we're suggesting in this paper. And I just wanted to make the point, I think, for Cabinet that there's a number of housing papers across the agenda tonight, and you can see that sort of spread of strategic engagement across in the private sector, social housing, dealing with homelessness, the understanding that the broad scope, if you like, of how we support housing as a whole system in this city. This particular paper is to ask a Cabinet to approve the acquisition and refurbishment of one property and the appropriation and refurbishment of another property to use by children's services. This is about understanding the flexible use of our right to buy receipts to support needs for our children and young people in the city, to enable us to provide homes that are more suitable to meet some of their needs, and to support our reduction in the demand in children's services by supporting them more effectively. So these properties would be small cluster homes, so used to accommodate up to 3 young people per house, so small scale, meet the needs of that particular cohort, a much more effective way to support them and help them in their journey to independence. Both of those homes would be registered with Ofsted and managed accordingly to the regulations that are required. Properties will be held in the general fund, but managed by Derby Homes as our clear landlord, and the approach will be reviewed every 3 years, so it's meeting the needs of children's services for that particular group. But obviously, as part of that review, if we can see it as successful, we can accelerate and do more of this sort of work to provide accommodation for that group in between that in that 3-year period. So we wouldn't wait for the end of 3 years to do more of it. If it works well, we want to do that and accelerate it if at all possible. And then Ian Filiger is here, colleagues, any questions of that if you want to ask any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Any comments, questions?
Chair, if I may.
By all means.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you to all the teams involved in this, because through the cross working that's gone on and the demand management, we're able to work effectively now as one council, one team, and this is really having some results here. So I'm really proud of the work that's gone on here, and I'd like to say a massive thank you for doing this, and hopefully this is a way forward for us, and I am excited to see what can come out in the future. So again, just a big thank you on behalf of Children's Services to everyone that has been able to work on this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Can I come in, Chair?
Yep.
And welcome this. This is something that we've been working jointly together to try and put Children's Services in a position that they can deliver better and more effective services for young people. Being maintained by Derby Homes, it will ensure that the standard of these provisions will be kept at a high level, and as Rachel has pointed out, this is just the start of what we could be doing. We are using unring-fence right to buy receipts on this, and as we know, with right to buy receipts, if you don't spend them, you give money back to the government. So I don't want, and I don't think anybody in this council wants to give money back to the government. We're willing to accept it from them, but when it comes to our receipts on right to buy, we do not want to give any of them back, and invest in them in services like this will make a saving for the council and for Children's Services while providing a high standard service. So thank you, Chair.
Excellent. In the absence of any other further comments, can I put recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 to Cabinet? Can we accept?
Agreed.
Approved.
Agreed.
Thank you. Then moving on to item 14, which is the Padley Centre relocation.
Okay, thank you, Leader. So this report moves on from the position that the approval that was taken at last Cabinet's meeting in July last year, that the Council would acquire the Padley Centre as part of the Beckett-Well regeneration scheme, and to assemble the land, particularly for the performance venue, which is a report later on this agenda. So the work has been going on since that meeting in July last year, where officers have worked really hard alongside the trustees of the Padley Group to enable this to take place, that relocation, but also to work with them on ensuring that the work that is carried out by the Padley is absolutely part of the very successful homelessness pathway we have in the city, right, involving a variety of organisations across the city working collectively, and collectively have reached that success of getting down to 6 rough sleepers in the camp last week, and has got some other really phenomenal achievements from him. So Padley has been really, and Ian and his team, and a lot of the work working alongside Padley on how we achieve that, because clearly we don't want to lose any momentum around the work that the Padley Centre deliver in that homelessness space, but clearly also we want to make sure that that is managed and that relocation is managed. So the report is really asking, in order to facilitate the delivery of this change and to support that we acquire properties owned by the Padley Centre, Padley Group, and property owned by the Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing Organisation on Beckett Street, and then gives financial support to the Padley Group through both grant funding and a secured loan to facilitate the necessary acquisition of alternative facilities for them, both for their residential part of their operation around supported housing, but also the community and warehousing facilities. So really this is about the report, the detail was in it, but it is about ensuring that land is secured for that essential regeneration of a priority area for our city, but also secures the important role played by the Padley Group in our partnership approach to tackling homelessness and rough sleeping in the city. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So Exec Scrutiny looked at this and came with one recommendation. They resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet that Padley are asked to contact the Decarbonise team to ensure that their new buildings are as energy efficient as possible. Rachel, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I mean, over and above that, the Council is absolutely positive about making that introduction for the Padley ourselves and coordinating that, so that support and advice is provided.
Okay, so we can accept that recommendation. Councillor Repton, anything to add?
No, I think, again, it's encapsulated there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. In that case, we have recommendations. Unless
please.
Any other comments? Yes, sorry, Baggy.
Thanks. I mean, given the position we're in, I think this is a sensible outcome to support an organisation as important as the Padley Centre, both in terms of relocation, but also in modelling services that they provide to make sure the homeless strategy is comprehensive, and partners work together, just as the strategic director has pointed out. But she also pointed out, this is part of the wider Beckett Well regeneration scheme, and particularly the performance venue. Without that proposal, we wouldn't be doing this. So the point I wanted to make, and I think it's an important point, is when we look at the business case, and we'll talk about this in the agenda item shortly, but when we look at that business case, we should be considering the whole cost of acquisition around this site, and I know the report is separate to that, but we wouldn't be doing this or relocating the Padley Centre had we not been regenerating the Beckett Well area and particularly cycling the performance venue there. So I think it's just really, really important that when we look at the overall costs of that project, all these other costs, assembling the land, moving people on, relocating the Padley Centre, and if there's any other costs for other businesses, buying parts of land, selling parts of land, all that should be dialed into the overall equation of the cost of that project. So it's open to public scrutiny and information that the total cost of doing a significant project in Derby, the performance venue, is known and everybody's clear on what the total costs are.
Thank you. We've heard that this is the Beckett Well is a priority area for the city. The Beckett Well entertainment venue is only a big part of that, but it's something that it's an area that's been a blight on the city for decades, as long as I can remember. And we've needed to invest in that area to be able to make this happen, and the investment is across the piece, not just in relation to Beckett Well. So, any other questions, comments? No. In that case, we have recommendation 2.1 to 2.2. Can that be agreed, Cabinet?
Agreed. Agreed.
In that case, we'll move on to item 16, the purchase of a residential development to provide 10 new affordable homes.
Chair, we've got item 15.
Yeah, threw me a bit then.
You're on mute, Chris.
Yes, it's the Rachel Roadshow and today, I think. But this is you two, is it? Compulsory acquisition of empty homes, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so this report in the sort of the plethora of housing reports tonight, I think obviously all painting a very positive picture. So also part of the agenda around making sure we can provide additional supply of affordable homes in the city and also deal with issues in the various sectors that are causing problems. We have a regular approach to compulsorily acquiring empty properties in the city. It's a very proactive approach. It increases the supply of affordable housing, as I've said, but it also tackles some of the environmental and nuisance issues that are accommodated around properties that are left vacant and not managed effectively. It's a regular report that we bring to members' attention. Often in the case of us threatening compulsory purchase using those powers, they are a last resort. Often that threat is enough and people bring forward those properties and back into use effectively, which is really helpful. Clearly our objective here is to get those homes back into use, people who need to live in them, as opposed to them staying empty. There are 4 properties identified here, all have been empty for a period of time, and the team have worked really hard to engage with those owners and to try and work with them around advice and support to get those properties back into use. That has failed. They have failed to engage, failed to do anything to try and move that forward, and therefore as a last resort we bring this report to you today to Cabinet to seek approval for the compulsory acquisition of those properties if that is necessary.
Okay, so this is another one in a series of this type of property that we've been working on and doing some very positive work on. Councillor Webb, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just thank the team for everything that they are doing on these. We tend not to end up with too many of these because most of the property owners work with us and with the services that we provide to bring those properties back into use. So, you know, those owners that work with us are really welcomed. It's the owners that take us down the compulsory purchase route that we have concerns about, and that's why we bring reports like this. When we've got housing waiting lists in the city, people without accommodation, any empty home, no matter how long it's been empty, is one too many. So I welcome this report. I hope that Rachel is right, and we've seen it before where this type of report probably only brings 2 out of the 4 that we're looking at into compulsorily purchase, but hope that those owners will work with us and will bring those properties back into use. Otherwise we will.
Okay, thank you. Executive scrutiny are resolved to note this report. Do we have any other comments or questions? No. In that case, I believe it's recommendations. Let me check. Is it 2.1 and 2.2? Can that be agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
So now we can move to item 16, which is purchase of residential development to provide 10 new affordable homes.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. And there is clearly a theme in this meeting. We will be bringing these reports more together in future to Cabinet rather than individually, so a little bit less reports to read, but the same, obviously, really important work going on. So this report is to ask approval to purchase a residential development to provide 10 new affordable homes in the city. Again, this is about how we use our housing revenue account capital programme and our right to buy receipts in flexible ways to build the stock of affordable homes across the city. This is an opportunity. We've been approached to purchase 10 newly converted homes in a self-contained development in the Abbey ward. And that would be really an effective way to increase our stock, particularly of 1 and 2 bed properties. So there's quite a high demand on Home Finder 4, and this development consists of 2 1-bedroom studios, 7 1-bedroom flats, and 1 2-bedroom duplex apartment. And clearly this is we have a rolling programme of acquiring properties in this way. So as well as transferring our land into Derby Homes to be able to build new properties and making sure those that are empty are brought back into use. Also, we're looking to acquire properties where possible that are a good use of our right to buy receipts in terms of creating more affordable units across the city for our residents to live in. So the approach is in the report. I think there's a number of reports in similar guises that come to Cabinet before, and hope the Cabinet would support that principle of acquiring that development and transferring that into Derby Homes management under our stock condition. Thank you.
Okay, so Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note this report. Do we have any other comments or questions in relation to this? No?
Just to say, Chair, that this is welcomed again, because this is 10 units that will be brought back into use, so they will be converted, will be run by Derby Homes, managed by Derby Homes, maintained by Derby Homes, and it will again increase the number of much needed properties that we are looking for in the city. So again, congratulations to everybody involved in putting this together.
Thank you. In that case, we've got recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Cabinet, can we agree that?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. We're moving on then to item 17, supporting the delivery of Smart Park and innovative food production park. David, is it? Who's going to do this one?
I'll lead on this one, Chair, if I may.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as I said at the exec scrutiny meeting last night, I'm really pleased to be able to present this report to Cabinet this evening. This is a really exciting proposition for the city to bring a high-tech, innovative food distribution, food manufacturing facility, a world first actually, into Derby on a site that we all know well in Spondon, the old Selenese site that's lain unused and in desperate need of regeneration for many, many years. The report itself is really just bringing together the respective arrangements that the City Council needs to put in place to contribute its own resources to this initiative, and also to formally acknowledge this City Council as the accountable body for the management of the funding that we secured through the Getting Building Fund via the LEP. And I think it is important to stress that Derby secured the single biggest allocation from that fund of the £44 million that was allocated across the D2N2 LEP area for Smart Park. It will, the resources that the council and the government via the LEP are contributing, a total of £17.5 million, are expected to lever private sector investment in excess of £300 million and add a similar figure to the Derby economy over the next 15-20 years. And critically, of course, at a time when the city has been hit hard through the pandemic, as we know, in terms of job losses, is expected to create up to 5,000 new jobs for the people of the city and the surrounding area. So all in all, it is a a fantastic opportunity that we are working really, really hard to bring to fruition. We're working very closely with the Smart Park team and obviously our colleagues at the LEP. We are obviously, we brought this report today, Chair, to ensure that we've got the necessary governance arrangements in place around funding and general support, particularly around the accountable body, as I said, and I guess the due diligence, etc., that you would expect us to undertake to ensure that this is a viable and credible opportunity for the City of Derby. I'm very happy to recommend it, Chair, and very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul. A fantastic opportunity we can't afford to miss up, and we'll do our absolute best to bring this to fruition for the benefit of the city. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Do we have any further comments or questions?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yep. Councillor Schenker, your old site, your old employment, I believe.
Absolutely, and I was there just before Christmas to go and have a look. 23 good years down there.
Good.
Absolutely, yeah. Excellent news for Derby and everybody, all of us, whether members or officers. I'm sure absolutely welcome this potential development for Derby, creating thousands of jobs and boosting our economy and diversifying our economy, as our Chief Exec has just outlined. Disappointing we didn't get the site included within the Freeport bid, but that I can't hold anybody responsible in Derby for that not happening. I know everybody tried their absolute best to try and make sure that happened, but we continue to fight to make sure it does happen without being included in the Freeport bid. And if there are changes in the future which allow it to go back in, that can only be welcomed. So I suppose we can only control what's in our control. And I just happened to be looking at the planning portal recently, and unfortunately there are a number of objections or concerns being raised by other organisations. I think Severn Trent Water have formally put in an objection which could lead to the EA getting involved and raising other concerns. And I know there's concerns from Highways England and I believe Network Rail already at this stage. So it's just reassurances really from the Chief Executive that as a local authority we continue to do as much as we can do to try and knock these hurdles down. It's a big significant project and there are going to be problems, there are going to be hurdles. I'm not that naive, but it's just that we've got to make sure we're ready to tackle those down in a speedy and timely manner to make sure that this happens and happens as soon as it possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just to say, it's actually, we haven't given up on the site being, if not fully, partially included in the Freeport situation. And I know Paul Simpson is aware of all the hurdles that need to be jumped. And Paul, did you want to say just a little bit about? I think the position we believe is that none of these concerns are insurmountable, and we're working with Smart Park and the people involved to resolve them. Paul, did you want to just spell that out a bit more?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Shanker, for your question. You're absolutely right. This is a massive development. 116 hectares, I think, is the figure. It's a big site to be developed, and of course, it's got huge historical issues associated with contamination and other issues from obviously its former use. So the issues are complicated. We are in conversation, working very closely with Smart Park and their senior team on navigating our way through this. So, for example, there are issues associated with, yes, there is a flood risk. I think it's important that people understand that the additional regeneration, if you like, the build-up that Smart Park will undertake won't add to the flood risk, because Severn Trent water would flood first anyway in something like a 1 in 100 year flood event. And so what the work that Smart Park will do will just mean that the kind of water, it doesn't escape as quickly, and it will add something like, I don't know, 15 to 20 millimetres to any flood water that takes place on the Severn Trent site. So we are obviously looking at trying to mitigate that. A key element of that will, of course, will be completing our OCOR works, because that will remove the flood risk from that part of the Derwent. So that is an absolutely critical development that we've got to complete in terms of phase 2 of OCOR. The Environment Agency, we've met with them on a number of occasions, and this is obviously been one of the key issues, the key risks that have been identified. And the Environment Agency, to be fair to them, have been incredibly supportive over this programme, because one of their key aspirations as an Environment Agency isn't just about the environmental considerations, but ensuring that any issues can therefore promote sustainable development. And Smart Park certainly fits the bill in terms of being about sustainability. So we're working very closely with the Environment Agency. I've already committed to Smart Park and the Environment Agency that if it would help, I would be very happy to meet with colleagues at Severn Trent Water to have conversations should they be required. We've also had very similar conversations with colleagues at Network Rail along similar lines in terms of some of the issues that they've got. And these things we are clearly looking to navigate our way through in time for the planning decision, which is due to be taken in April. So I guess my message, Chair, is the City Council is clearly cognizant of the risks and issues, and we are playing our full and active part in supporting the Smart Park team to navigate their way through them.
Okay, excellent. Any other further comments or questions? No, I think I mentioned that Exec Scrutiny had noted the report. In that case, we've got recommendation 2.1, Cabinet, can we agree?
Agree.
Most definitely.
Thank you. Item 18 then is compliance and contract financial procedure rules. Simon?
Yep, so thank you, Chair. This is again a standard report that we have. There are 3 items on it tonight. The first is about a framework for one-to-one tuition and teaching support for our virtual school. Our virtual school is where we act as the corporate parenting for looked after children and children at risk. And this is about continuing the real value-added work that this service helps those children in and around the education system. The second is a very small addition to the capital programme of 30,000 for the renewal of the CCTV network and to agree its funding. And the final one is the write-off of 2 DGF loans totaling 92,000 in relation to 2 businesses where the grants were given out in 2013 and 2014, where I'll just highlight to members that when people come to the Derby Enterprise Growth Fund, it's about giving some of these opportunities to develop businesses, many successfully, who maybe don't automatically qualify for commercial lending, and that was one of the purposes. So we've done all necessary recovery action with these loans. They're not total loans for what was given out, but residual loans as companies have gone into administration, and we're recommending that the loans are written off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Executive Scrutiny resolved to note the report. Does anybody have any other further questions or comments, please?
No, no, Chair, just to move as printed, please.
Okay, so the recommendation is 2.1. Can that be agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on then. We move to item 19, Beckett Well Performance Venue Project Update. Rachel?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take this, and other colleagues I'm sure will ask any questions that members may have on some of the detail. So this report is to present an update and the next steps on the Beckett Well Performance Venue, and noting and ensuring that the project is developed in line with the financial parameters that were set and agreed by Cabinet in July 2020. And I need to reinforce, I think, in terms of clarity, the decision has been made to move forward on this project is simply about noting the progress being made since that July decision. I think it'll be quite useful to set this in some context for members. This is about a project which is sort of doing three things, if you like. It is about our ambition to regenerate our city centre, to build economic confidence and belief in our city and its reinvention, to tackle an area of significant market failure and blight in the heart of our city, as well as bringing forward a much needed performance venue for cultural activity and vibrancy for our city. Overall, the Council has a particularly interesting role in economic development, in creating the environment for enabling people to feel confident enough to bring investment opportunities into our city. We can't do this alone as a local authority. We have to create an environment that makes that possible. And Beckett is very much in that model of a public and private partnership that have created the conditions for bringing a sustainable generation of a key site forward for the Council and for the city. And I would just reinforce the Beckett Wells site has been derelict for a number of years. It is a critical piece of the jigsaw, if you like, in our city, in that it sits between our successful Derby On shopping centre to one side and then our successful Cathedral Quarter independent cultural sort of heart of the city on the other. And actually, since the closure of Debenhams and that change of the retail sector in Victoria Street has been a blight, if you like, in the middle of the city, and the opportunity to regenerate that site and to bring forward new uses on that will have a major impact on the whole of the city and its coherence as a whole. So in terms of that public-private partnership, we have worked to support the land assembly around that site. We have de-risked it and we have leveraged that investment, and very much St James's Securities, our development partner on this site, have invested into that vision, that regeneration that we had for the site. Phase 1, the residential scheme and the public square, so 260 build-to-rent apartments and the public square are likely to start on site in May this year, and that has gone very well. And I would say as a result of that increased confidence in our city, the proposal came through that investment opportunity for the performance venue, 3,500 seater arena, being brought forward last year. And that, I think, is really important to reflect that displays and demonstrates a degree of confidence in Derby as being a place to invest in, and that's really important for our economy and our greater economic sort of confidence. And also it brings forward a venue that will be able to host music, comedy, touring theatre and events for our city, a much needed new cultural facility in the city for a long time. So in July last year, Cabinet approved all necessary actions to enter into a full funding agreement to acquire a new performance arena at this site. And that work has been going on with officers across the council since that time to really undertake effective due diligence against all of the issues around that arrangement and to de-risk that project for the council. As part of the partnership we're working on, clearly, is about the risk being outsourced, if you like, to the private sector. So the construction and the planning risk are taken in full by the developer, by James's Securities, and then the long-term operational risks of running a facility, the bookings, the programming, repairs of that property are taken by the operator, again, external from the council, de-risking that for the local authority. So in terms of the operator, where we are with operators, St James's Securities have brought forward some proposals, gone to the market to test interest in an operator in running that facility, and extremely strong interest has been demonstrated of national players who have strong reputations and access clearly to a really full and vibrant events programme that sort of tours the country. And despite the impacts of COVID on that industry, which have being quite significant, as members will be aware, that is still the case. There is still that belief and that confidence in Derby as being a place to invest and to come. And that's a really important point to make in this context, that for us as a city, in going into hopefully a post-COVID world and our economic regeneration is going to be critical, we need to have that confidence in the private sector to invest, to open businesses here, to bring investment, and to make sure they have the jobs and the skills we need in our city for its future. So the report updates members on the progress since July and clarifies the next steps, reinforcing all of those positive benefits and outcomes we get from the project. In terms of the recommendations, it is to note that the work we've done has confirmed the capital costs remain in the parameters that were set at the council meeting back in July. To fund estimated some additional project management costs and professional fees to ensure we're getting the right product at the end of the process, much as appropriately managed, and to note that the scheme is subject to a Gateway 3 approval through the Treasury's Green Book business case model through the Council's Programme Management Board for any commitment to spend is made. So that due diligence is assured. And to note the dependency, obviously, on the acquisition of the Padley Centre, which the Council has considered or has considered in a previous report on this agenda. I recognise there's been some confusion about the nature of this project. I think was reflected last night with members, and so officers are very keen to invite St James's Securities to speak to an all-member briefing at some point to explain some of the detail behind the project and answer some of those questions for members that they may have. I'm sure I'll have colleagues who can answer any questions about the report or want to add anything, but thank you for that, Chairman.
Thank you, Rachel. So we got 3 recommendations from executive scrutiny last night. I don't know if we're able to put them up, are we? But I'll go through them and we'll get the officer view on the recommendations. The first one is to recommend to Council Cabinet that it produces a full business case as soon as possible for the Beckett Well performance venue in order to be open and transparent. We must be able to see the analysis of the business case, comparing and contrasting all other possible options, including the assembly room site, and for this business case to be presented to the Executive Scrutiny Board for discussion. The second one is to recommend to Council Cabinet that it ask officers to include an update on the Beckett Well performance venue on the agenda for the next all-member COVID briefing. And the third one is to recommend to Council Cabinet to ask for the new venue to be able to be made zero carbon in operation at minimal cost, even if it isn't from the start. This needs to be part of us delivering action on the climate emergency. So I'm going to deal with these in reverse order, if you like. Mr. Kaplan, I think, or whoever wishes to comment on the zero carbon side of things. My understanding is, well, this is not our development, it's SJS's development, and they will bring forward the development, and planning will be heard in as soon as possible. So where are we in terms of working with SJS to achieve as near to zero carbon as possible, please?
Hello, Chair. It's Catherine Williams. I'm happy to comment on that.
Thank you.
You are correct in your summary, as I explained to the Executive Scrutiny Committee yesterday. We've been presented with a proposal with particular sustainability credentials as part of that proposal. SJS, as our developer partner, are very aware of our commitments to environmental sustainability issues, and we will work with them to maximise opportunities in the building for sustainability features. But I was also clear to Executive Scrutiny that due to the nature of the deal, we can't insist on those or specify them, given that we have been presented with a proposal. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of acceptance of that, with that caveat, we have been and will continue to work with SGS, the new venue, to be able to make the venue as close to zero carbon as possible. So we can do that. The recommendation 2 was in respect of officers to include an update in the Beckett Well performance venue on an agenda for an all-member briefing. I think, Rachel, you've just conceded to that, agreed to that. That's an SGS are prepared to do that with no problem.
Absolutely, that's a good recommendation yesterday from Executive Scrutiny. We're happy to do that for all members.
And that brings us to the first one, which talks about producing that the Council Cabinet produces a full business case as soon as possible for the Beckett Well performance venue. This alludes to the misunderstanding around this being agreed last July, and the fact that this is actually, this paper today is an update and progress report on the good progress made in relation to the decisions taken then. Rachel, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there was some confusion reflected yesterday at Executive Scrutiny. We did try and put across the point that the decision had already been taken. I mean, clearly the business case is being developed and will go through our PMO structures as appropriate for due diligence. That can be shared at a subsequent point with members potentially. But in terms of understanding the possible options, and I make this point last night at the Executive Scrutiny meeting, the options are very different. This is about taking an opportunity presented by the private sector to do a number of things at the same time, around looking at the site, a blighted site, confidence in the city around its economic, and also bring forward a performance venue. It is a very different model than a private-public partnership, very much de-risking. It is a very different model to the model that we wanted to compare it to, which was obviously on the Assembly Room site run by the council itself. So it's a very different thing to compare, almost like a chalk and a cheese situation. Difficult to know how to respond to that appropriately without misunderstanding at the beginning.
Okay, so Simon, do you want to add anything in relation? You're on the board that looks into this and that does this. Do you want to add anything in terms of the quality assurance that's being sought and whatever?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And as Rachel and yourself have mentioned, the key decision was made last July, with the funding agreed by full council in September. And that key decision was to take all necessary actions to finalise and enter into necessary contractual arrangements to acquire a new performance arena with the benefit of a lease to an operator in the Beckett Well regeneration area, subject to defined financial parameters. And that was a delegation to the Strategic Director of Communities in Place in consultation with the relevant people. Since last July, we've been working in developing that full business case, which will be in line with the Treasury Green Book model, describing the strategic, economic, commercial, financial and management case for the project. This builds on the economic assessment that formed part of the July report. Working with our legal advisors, Geldards, we've been developing commercial negotiations on both the land sale and the forward funding agreement detailed in this report. We've also commissioned and received external assessments and reviews on the venue by Faithful and Gould, leading property quantity surveying firm, and also on the operator by Amiens. The process of following the key decision last July is that in order for us to move from business case to delivery, it has to go through the council's PMO board gateway process, and stage 3 is the sort of full business case that we anticipate happening in the next few weeks, as we feel we have now got all the information to allow us to carry out that review, and subject to the outcome of that review for Rachel to seek assurance about whether the delegation can be excised as agreed by council last July.
Thank you, Simon. So in conclusion, you're perfectly satisfied that we have been doing and will continue to do all necessary due diligence using legal and expert advice in the circumstances?
It is the view that as officers we have taken the key decision that members made last July, and we have undertaken all the relevant due diligence to inform the PMO Gateway 3, and obviously the board will then consider all of that evidence and make recommendations appropriately.
Thank you. Any other comments before I go to Martin, whose scrutiny board it is? Martin, any update or further comments on having heard the responses?
Yeah, there is no confusion at all, Chair, because what we're asking in that recommendation is what was promised by yourself on the 15th of July last year. And I'd refer officers, members and the press to the YouTube video to confirm that. The people of Derby want and deserve an exciting first-class performance venue, and we totally support this aspiration. Hopefully it will go ahead as planned on the Beckett Well site. When the report was discussed last night, the cross-party executive scrutiny committee, it was unanimously agreed that it was void of any of the details that we needed and were promised to properly scrutinise it. We therefore tabled the recommendation asking the Cabinet to supply us with the promised business case and the rationale behind the proposals, so that proper scrutiny, as required under our Constitution, can take place. At last night's meeting, I expressed a fear that if these proposals were railroaded through without proper disclosure and proper debate, then it could undermine that vital public support and the trust that is so desperately needed. So again, I would urge you simply to stick to your promise and supply what's actually needed here, and then we can move forward in a united and positive way with this exciting project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think I attended last night along with officers and attempted to point out the misconception that this was anything other than an update in relation to the decision taken last July. I did point out that obviously there will have to be planning permission submitted and agreed, and obviously everybody, including the members of the public, will have the opportunity to see the detail there. This is a developer, and you need to repeat it, the officers have just confirmed it, this is a developer-led proposal, and the excellent developer that we've got in STS have used expert advice to come up with the detail of the venue that they and the proposed operator, and I understand in the report mentions the fact that they have identified a preferred operator who I understand to be a UK and nationally renowned operator who operates similar venues around the UK and abroad, and it's for them to progress and bring forward the details to lead us to a forward funding agreement and form agreement in relation to the land sale agreement. So we cannot agree to the recommendations because it's flawed in that it's not for us, for the council, to produce a business case. It's the business case of the developer under the developer-led agreement. The other two, Martin, are you content with the reply in relation to yes, STS agreeing to come and talk to an all-member, or those interested to answer the questions in relation to this?
Yes, that's a good idea.
And the response in relation to our best efforts to continue to encourage them and work with them to make every attempt to make this venue zero carbon.
Totally understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll open it. Are there any other questions, comments?
Yes, please, Chair.
Councillor Schenker.
Thank you, Chair. We fully support the concept and we'll do everything in our power to make sure it happens. We'll not oppose this for the sake of opposition, just like what you did with the performance arena on the Assembly Room site. That would have been opening, incidentally, I think, sometime next year. And in the process, wasting £2.5 million of abortive costs and further millions.
Do you have anything to say about the Beckett Well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Against officer advice on your flawed refurbishment idea, if you remember.
Do you want
the scheme there was fully costed.
Well? You want to stick to Beckett? Well, I'm not taking comments on this.
I am, absolutely. I'm talking about the business case was available, and that would have desperately helped us in the city centre, and it would have been open.
So any comments on Beckett Well before I move on?
Absolutely, Chris. If you let me speak, you seem a bit edgy. If you just let me speak and say what I've got to say, and then maybe yourself.
Got a lot of business to conduct.
We all have, Chris. I totally appreciate that this is a developer-led market proposal, so I don't need patronising and being told we don't understand this or there's some confusion. And it's the developer coming to the council on the Beckett Well site. An idea that in principle has our full support. And since last July, we've been desperately asking for more details on these proposals, including a fully costed business case, together with the rationale as to why the site is thought to be better than others in the city centre. And at Cabinet, let's just remind ourselves, at Cabinet last year, 15th of July, I recall raising the issue of delegation. You effectively committed the council to almost £50 million on a scheme that was purely a concept at that stage. No design works, definitely no detailed cost, and the certainty of the benefits to Derby were unknown. And Chris, you gave us assurances at that meeting, and I was watching the video recently, last night I watched it again, and you, in fact, you gave us your word, saying full details would be available, and not just be available, you said they would be available for full scrutiny by fellow councillors. Executive scrutiny and Cabinet before proceeding. These were your words, Chris. The report tells us that the business case is not yet complete. So how you think this report meets the commitment you made last year is beyond me. Or was it again one of those administration, now trademark, misleading, throwaway comments, hoping nobody will hold you to account? And I'm sorry if this is uncomfortable, and it obviously is, but your actions and that of both of your deputies is undermining the confidence in this city. It's undermining the confidence in this council. And I'm sorry, but I won't leave that unchallenged. In fact, the only thing this report actually tells us is that the projected council management and governance costs has already doubled from circa 400,000 to what we believe will be 800,000 going forward. And once again, you put in your group, well, whatever's left of it now, above the city by bringing this report to Cabinet without the detail for an informed debate, proper scrutiny, or informing the public what their money is being spent on. And to do this 8 weeks before important local elections further just demonstrates the desperate measures you prepare to take for a good news story. The mature and responsible, and dare I say it, open and transparent approach would have been for the relevant details to have been worked up and then shared with everybody so that informed decisions and views could be reached. I just hope that this cavalier attitude to this significant investment, just bear with me please, Chris, and strategically important project for Derby doesn't impact the confidence of key developers, investors and operators we desperately need to attract to Derby to aid our recovery. The project is so important to Derby and we genuinely want to be able to support it and sign it off. But I just don't see how we can do this without first seeing the business case that you promised, Chris, we would see, and it going through the proper scrutiny process. The scrutiny committee could not justifiably do a proper review of this project based on the report. And I suggest you accept at least part of that first recommendation. Let's not play semantics on the Cabinet doing the business case or officers doing the business case. Whoever needs to do that business case, whether it's SJS, very reputable, excellent developers in this field, brought to Derby to help us in a really important area. Let's just rather than arguing about the decision last year or the decision this year, when we raised it last year, let's just get on with it. Do the business case. Let's present that business case to fellow councillors, to the city, and if it's right for Derby, we'll all back it. Doing anything less is you making a decision completely blindfolded, and we don't know what we're paying for, we don't know what we're getting. So I urge you again, just put the city before your party and let's do the business case, let's get it reviewed, and let's all 51 members of this council get behind this project and let's deliver it.
Okay, thank you. You're absolutely right in one point. It is strategically vital for the city. It's the potential of this of this venue is massive in terms of kick-starting or the rest of the development of a site that's blighted the city for 40 years, and it's also going to kick-start the regeneration of the city centre as well. Where you're wrong is in many points, but there's no pretense here. This report was not intended to do anything other than update Cabinet in relation to the progress on the agreement that was made back in July last year, and that's what it does, and that's what it covers. You talk about costs. This was dealt with at scrutiny last night, and it was explained the circumstances around that, and I'm going to ask Simon Riley to explain it for your benefit as well, but it was obviously explained and accepted because no recommendation came out of that last night. So please, Councillor Shank, you say you want the members of this council to get behind it, then do so, because we should not be doing anything to detract from attracting developers and investors and the skilled people. You talk about St James's being well respected, and they're already well on with providing us the public square in their phase 1. They've identified and used the top people in the business to bring this proposal forward, and they've identified world-renowned operators to do this for the city. So I think it's beholden on you to get behind this and support it to the hilt, and deliver for Derby what has been needed. Nobody's been able to deliver in 40 years. So just to finish off on that, Simon, we addressed the issue in regard of expenses and costs last night. Do you want to just, for Councillor Shanker's benefit, repeat that for us?
Yes,
just prior to Simon coming in, could you just explain then your commitment to bring a business case back as you promised in July? You just seem to miss that point. Sorry, Chris.
Simon, do you want to carry on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. When the report came last summer, the fees that were detailed in that was to bring it to the stage where we could get the advice and the full business case, and that was just shy of £500,000 for this. And we have done some really tight commercial negotiations about the fees that we need going forward, including a monitoring surveyor, because this is going to be a project that will aim to be delivered by the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. We have got agreement for some joint appointments in respect of cultural advisors and other aspects, and we have assessed our own proportionate project management. So what is in here is to allow us to successfully monitor, oversee and work with SGS and the operator to bring a successful performance venue around that 24-25 period. Thank you, Chair.
So, in answer to your second question, Baggy, there's no secrets here. There's nothing untoward in what's being brought forward. We've got the experts, we've got the right developer to bring it forward. We've had the reassurances in terms of costs and due diligence. We will be provided with a really excellent venue to fit the role that's required. We as council and council officers are not experts in the provision of and requirements for an entertainment venue, and with the due diligence and with when we come to the point of agreeing a land sale agreement and a forward agreement at an upcoming, why not for political reasons, not for elections like you seem to want to do. The reason that it's coming now is an update in relation to the prelude for the project management office, the value for money assessment and due diligence that will be provided by the Green Book assessment, which is up and coming. Okay.
So when will we see the business case as you promised in July, Chris?
So moving on. Any other questions?
Or won't we see it?
Any more questions from anybody else? No? Any other contributions?
Right. Go if you
in
want.
That case, we'll move on to ask Cabinet to agree recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. Can that be agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Blindly.
Thank you. Where are we? I've lost my agenda for the moment. Help me out, Karen, with the next item 20.
Item 20, council plan monitoring.
Okay, I guess that's Rachel, is it?
It's me, Chris. It's Heather Greenan.
Sorry, Heather.
Sorry, Chair. Okay, this report presents performance highlights from the third quarter of this financial year. So that's the period October to December 2020. The report reflects the context of COVID-19, which has impacted on the Council's priorities this year. So we have taken a pragmatic approach to reporting against the Council panel deliverables and not set specific targets as we normally would. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, there has been considerable progress delivered, as we've shown at paragraph 4.3. So highlights include the opening of the new pedestrian and cycle bridge over the A52, development of the Climate Change Commission and supporting action hubs, continued progress with the construction of Moorways Sports Village, and our ongoing response to meeting the needs of homeless people in the city, and not least our work to support wider families in the city and stabilise the numbers of children in care. I'm sure everyone would acknowledge the Council's COVID response. Working alongside our partners and communities has been phenomenal during the year, and some of the recent achievements are recognised at paragraph 4.5. This includes the opening of our lateral flow testing centre at Riverside, support for the NHS vaccination programme at Derby Arena, allocation of grants to over 1,000 businesses in the city, COVID support officers to promote effective public messaging and enforcement, as well as partnership support for families through the distribution of food parcels. Members will have been kept updated at a series of councillor briefings that have taken place over the last 9 months, because obviously the impact of COVID has been significant. The performance report does, of course, acknowledge that there are areas of risk, and we have identified these at paragraph 4.4. In particular, I think managing the future impact of COVID-19 and the need to mitigate demand for some of our frontline services. It's worth noting that in February 2021, Council Cabinet approved a recovery plan which takes forward many of these priority areas, aligned with the Council's future aspirations for the city in light of COVID. There's further detail on all of the kind of performance highlights as shown in Appendix 1. In terms of recommendations, Cabinet are asked to note the latest performance position paying particular attention to our strategic risks, and to secondly to note key progress in line with the identified themes for our recovery plan. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so Executive Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Do we have any other questions or comments in relation to Heather's report? No? Good. In that case, we have recommendations. Bear with me.
Yeah, it's 2.1 and 2.2, Chair.
Thank you for getting me out of that, Heather. Can we put to Cabinet recommendations 2.1 and 2.2? Can they be agreed?
Agreed.
So, item 21 then is the exclusion of press and public, and I need to announce that we resolve under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 that the press and public be excluded from the rest of the meeting during discussions of the following items on the grounds that it will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 5 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Could we confirm when the meeting has been closed, please, to the public?